Hey guys, Nick here, and I just wanted to make a video talking about something that's been the topic of discussion for the last couple of weeks, ever since Batman vs Superman came out. And obviously, if you're reading the title, you already know what I'm going to be talking about. So, with the release of Batman vs Superman and the negative critical reception of it, and a lot of fans voicing their negative opinions of it, a lot of people are voicing their opinions and saying that Zack Snyder is a terrible director. Zack Snyder shouldn't be trusted with DC anymore. Like, Warner Brothers needs to fire him. They need to get him off Justice League and all that stuff. He's a crappy director, all that kind of stuff. But you know what? I'm here to say, you know what? Fans are full of shit. I'm sorry. But you know what? Everyone loves to jump on the I hate Zack Snyder's a piece of crap director bandwagon. Because ever since Man of Steel, people have been unfairly criticizing him as a director. Because, granted, there are some things in his movies that could be better. I mean, he's not a perfect filmmaker. And look, am I a little biased because I have loved Man of Steel and I love Batman vs Superman? Yeah, a little bit, but that's why I'm here to talk about my feelings on it. Because I've seeing all over Twitter and everything, all these fan sites and everything. So many people just jumping on that bandwagon of oh, Zack Snyder can't direct. He made a terrible movie twice. But it's seriously as a fan of these two movies he's made, and I even like that movie Watchmen he did. After seeing Watchmen and what he was able to do with that story, I never read the Watchmen comics, but as a comic book fan and watching that movie, that was a really great movie, and it was a great movie for fans of the Watchmen. And a lot of people who are fans of Watchmen praise that movie, and deservedly so. That was a great movie. And was it received did it receive all this high critical praise? No, it didn't. Was the critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes as low as Batman vs Superman? No. But at the same time, Zack Snyder has for a long time been criticized for his directing. But me personally, me being the fan of DC Comics and of Superman and Batman, all these characters, and after watching Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, Zack Snyder knows what fans want. In my opinion, I don't care what the idiotic fanboys who just jump on that bandwagon are saying. If you're a real fan of these characters and you go into these movies with an open mind, that you know what, this isn't exactly how it's going to be in the comics, that these are characters that are going to be treated with respect, and that's where a lot of people don't they aren't saying that he's doing right, because he treats these characters with respect. He's taking them very seriously, and that's another thing too. People are saying, oh, these movies are too dark, they're too grim, blah blah blah, and people are saying, oh, it's because they don't want to be different from Marvel, blah blah blah. But that's the thing, but especially with Batman vs Superman, a lot of people are criticizing Zack Snyder in the tone of the movie, because it's oh, they're just trying to be too different from Marvel. But yet at the same time, they're comparing it to Marvel by saying, oh, it should have been lighter like Marvel movies. You're not allowing the director to introduce his own tone into these movies and separate himself from Marvel, because Marvel and DC are two completely different things, and Zack Snyder knows that. So ever since the Dark Knight movies with Christopher Nolan, DC's kind of adopted this tone of we want these movies to take place in a more realistic setting. Can they be a little dark? Sure, but that doesn't mean they're all dark and grim. In Batman vs Superman, yeah, there's a lot of darkness in it, but in my opinion, I think it works. A lot of people don't agree with me, but you know what? Just in the way that Batman vs Superman, I think, is the greatest example of Zack Snyder and his ability to give us characters that, while they are comic book characters, they are characters with flaws, characters with a lot of depth that I don't think a lot of people are seeing, because people are just taking the movie at face value, and it's oh, it's another action blockbuster, so I gotta point out this, and this, because this is what's wrong with the movie. Zack Snyder did this wrong. Zack Snyder can't direct this right. Zack Snyder can't make a good story. And that's where I just feel Zack Snyder, again, like I said before, he gets fans. And Batman vs Superman was honestly, it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting. It was something different, but you know what? I still loved the movie. Yet, were there some editing problems? Yeah, sure. But you know what? Zack Snyder, and the way he handled the Superman character, and for whatever reason, a lot of people want to criticize his version of Superman and the character he introduced in Man of Steel, because it's not the Superman that everyone grew up with. And everyone criticized that last Superman movie before Man of Steel, which was Superman Returns, because they made Superman a boring character, and that he didn't have too much going on, and that was too much of the Reeve era Superman. and people criticize that movie for not creating a Superman character that a lot of people liked. And we go into Man of Steel, and people are criticizing it for not being like the Christopher Reeve Superman. And that's where, like, fanboys and certain comic book fans in general are really hypocritical like that. Like, they want one thing, and then when they get it, they criticize it. So it's like, like, that makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Like, you want it, but when you have it, it's like, oh, that's terrible. Zack Snyder can't do anything right. Like, that's where I just feel like fanboys just, they just like to be, a lot of fanboys just like to hate, you know? And ever since Batman vs. Superman came out, like, every single YouTube video about Batman vs. Superman criticizing a lot of the hate goes towards Zack Snyder, and I don't think that's fair at all. Zack Snyder is one of the greatest visual directors out there right now, and that's, a lot of people can agree he's a very visual director, and that's where, like, a lot of his style and a lot of his talent goes to. And as a fan of his, like, I think that, again, like, he could obviously make a great visual story, but in my opinion, he does tell great, well-written stories. Were there some problems in Batman vs. Superman? Yeah, sure. Were there some problems in Watchmen? Sure. Like, I'm not here to say Zack Snyder's a perfect director. I'm just saying a lot of the things that fans are saying are, in my opinion, wrong, because, like, a lot of fans are just jumping on that bandwagon. And, you know, and like, movies are subjective and all that kind of stuff, so obviously, take what I say with a grain of salt, because this is coming from a guy who loves his movies, but I'm here to defend him and just explain to people that, you know what, like, fans just like to jump on any kind of hate bandwagon, especially when it comes to DC, because DC movies, in particular, have been slammed by critics, have been slammed by fans, and it's like, you want these movies to succeed and be something different than Marvel, but yeah, at the same time, you're not allowing them to be different because you criticize them for being different. So it's just, I don't know. So to go back into the things that work for me, especially with Batman vs. Superman and what Zack Snyder was able to do, he made a movie that, you know what, when I first saw the movie, its flaws were more apparent to me because, you know, it was my first time viewing the movie, so I didn't know what to expect. But in that movie, you know, we see it's a mixture of, like, three things. It's a Man of Steel sequel, it's the Batman vs. Superman story, and it's also the dawn of the Justice League. So with those three things all taking place in this 2.5 hour movie, it works well for some people like me, and it didn't work for a lot of people, like all the people who have been criticizing the movie. But you know what? To me, everything in that movie, other than some editing scenes, like editing in certain scenes, a lot of that movie makes sense to me. And it's just the way the story flows. In my opinion, it's a very beautiful story, and it's very beautifully shot. And again, like we can all agree, Zack Snyder's a great, like, visual director. But one of the things I hate is that when fans say he's like, oh, he's just like Michael Bay, like all he is just for show. Michael Bay, especially when it comes to Transformers movies, or most movies in general that he produces or directs, he's a crappy filmmaker. Like, most of us can agree with that, because Michael Bay sexualizes his characters, his female characters, and he emphasizes the action, but, like, Zack Snyder doesn't do that, despite what idiot fanboys say. And for me, when I'm watching Batman vs. Superman, Wonder Woman wasn't overly sexualized at all. Lois Lane was one of the biggest highlights of the movie, in my opinion, because everyone's calling Lois Lane a damsel in distress, but Lois Lane is, like, if you look at the character and who she is from the comics and how it's translated to the screen, she's a character that was willing to sacrifice her life for her job. Like, she doesn't care. Like, she's going out there and trying to get these stories and to share to the world what's going on. Yeah, she's put in these situations where she knows that Superman's going to be there to save her, but at the same time, like, she's putting her life out there to get things done. And even, this is a bit of a spoiler, but by the end of the movie, when, like, you know, everyone, like, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman are all fighting Doomsday, like, she's going out there and grabbing the Kryptonite Spear to help them. Like, she's there, like, with them in that fight. Yeah, she's not, like, directly fighting Doomsday, obviously, because she's a human and she'd die, but Zack Snyder, that's one of another highlight is he treats his female characters he gives them so much depth, he treats them with respect. I mean, I haven't seen his movie Sucker Punch, and I've seen a lot of people, like, criticize that movie, but that's the thing too, like, we see, like, a whole movie centered around this group of girls, and that's something you don't necessarily see unless it's a stereotype. It's like, oh, it's a college, like, sorority movie, or oh, it's like this, or it's like, oh, it's like that. Like, Zack Snyder doesn't deal with stereotypes. He makes strong female characters, and that's the thing that I don't think people really bring up in his movies. And that's where I feel like, especially in Batman versus Superman, people like aren't giving him enough credit as a director, because he's giving us these characters with depth, with flaws. Superman is a flawed character; he's more human, and yet people are still criticizing, like, oh, like I don't understand his motivation. Like, why is he feeling the need to save these people? Because he wants to do the right thing. Did you not understand that from Man of Steel? Like, and then with Batman in this movie, again, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler, but when you see Batman, like, not necessarily care about the lives of criminals, and he's allowing them to die and kind of killing them, like, you see, like, a lot of people criticizing that, but to me, it's like, you see Batman start in this dark place. Like, you see, like, in the trailers and in the movie, you see, like Robin's suit with the Joker's, like, with the Joker riding on it. And you see how, like, just how much of a dark character this version of Batman is. And when Superman finally comes into his life, and after they battle it out, and they have that scene where it's like, what brings them together ultimately is their mothers, and a lot of people criticize that as well. Like, Zack Snyder created a character, well, he didn't create Batman, but he has this character with so many flaws that when he allows himself to see Superman as an ally, as a friend, like, he's willing to change his perception of the world and his perception of himself. Like, we see by the end of the movie, like, how much he's willing to go to save Superman's mom, and how far he's willing to go. Like, and even if you look at like pictures from the set of Suicide Squad, and you see the Batmobile doesn't have guns anymore, more than likely because that's from Superman's influence on Batman. So there's a lot of character development in Batman as a character in Batman vs Superman. A lot of people don't really see that because everyone looks at the movie at face value. They don't look into the movie like a lot of us fans who are like, I don't know. I just feel like this whole thing of people bring up, oh, Zack Snyder can't direct, Zack Snyder can't do this, Zack Snyder can't do that. Again, this is coming from someone who's a big fan of his. I think when people criticize his movies, a lot of people, they just look at him at face value. It's like, oh, it's all visual, there's no story. If you really pay attention and look into what he's presenting to the audience and to us fans, there's really a lot there. Are his movies perfect? No. But Zack Snyder, I think, is one of the better comic book directors out there. And he gave us a movie in Batman vs Superman that's unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's unlike any Marvel movie I've seen, unlike any other DC movie I've seen, because it shows these characters in a real world setting. Yeah, it's a comic book movie and there's superheroes with superpowers, all that kind of stuff. But we're dealing with like consequences and like what happens when like there is a person out there with all these abilities, and how they need to keep their abilities in check because of how the world reacts to it, and how everything's very political, how everything and everyone's really sensitive to having this alien with powers like walking among us, and he deals with that. And a lot of people don't appreciate what he does in his movies, and there's very similar themes and tones in the Watchmen movie that he did. Granted, like, that was based off of Alan Moore's story, and it was an adaptation, but still, in that movie, you see the ramifications of what being a superhero in more of a realistic world can do to people. And I don't think obviously, I think he gets way too much hate. Zack Snyder, I think, in my personal opinion, is one of the better directors out there right now making superhero movies. And I'm, as a fan and as a person who loved what he did with Batman versus Superman, I'm ecstatic for what he's gonna do with Justice League. Honestly, but with me all saying this, I do want for him to take a break from DC movies for a while, allow his creativity to flow better, and like allow him to do these other projects, because that was a problem with the Marvel movies with Jon Favreau when he did Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, Joss Whedon when he did Avengers and Avengers 2. I want Zack Snyder, because Zack Snyder's a great, I think he's a creative genius. Like, again, like his movies aren't perfect, but he's a very creative individual, and as much a fan I am of his movies and his work, I do want him to take a break and allow his creativity to flow so he can make better stories. I'm not saying that the Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel weren't good stories, because obviously I'm saying that they are. But you know what? I think that's all I'm going to say, because I think I've said enough at this point. So if you guys agree with me, let me know in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, keep it civil. Don't just like bash my opinion or bash Zack Snyder. Give me a real argument. Give me something real to actually talk to you guys about. because I'm not gonna respond to idiotic fanboys. I'm not gonna respond to trolls. I'm not gonna do any of that kind of stuff because I want to. If you disagree, give me like legit reasons and we'll discuss it. Like I'm not gonna deal with any of that stupid crap. So, anyways, that's gonna be it for me and my thoughts on the whole Zack Snyder thing and me defending him and his movies. Because again, obviously, at the end of the day, again, take what I say with a grain of salt. This is coming from a fan of his, so I am a little biased. But at the same time, I just want us all, as fans and as fans of his, or fans of movies in general, just when we criticize someone like Zack Snyder, or in general when we criticize a movie like that, really understand what it is you're criticizing. Like if you're gonna criticize the movie, find legit criticism. Don't just jump on the bandwagon of like, oh, like he can't direct. It's like, well, why do you think that? Oh, just because. Like I don't like his movies. That's not a legit reason. Like, create a discussion, like a real discussion about it, because trolls and idiot fanboys, they add nothing to the conversation. Like I don't mind people disagreeing with me. Like I don't. Like I'll create like especially like in my own YouTube channel. Like there are people who disagree with me in my opinion sometimes, and then we'll talk it out like civil human beings. But what I don't like is when people are there to troll and are there just because they're idiots and they say stupid shit. So again, with that being said, that's going to be it for me. So if you guys like what you see here, go ahead and hit subscribe below. Obviously, I talk about a lot of DC stuff and superhero stuff and TV shows and stuff. So that's all up on my channel. So yeah, that's going to be it. So until next time, guys, have a good one.